Welcome to the Sustainable Dish Podcast. I'm Diana Rogers, a real food registered dietitian, author, and sustainability advocate. I co-host this podcast with James Connolly, who was a producer on my film, Sacred Cow. I also founded the Global Food Justice Alliance, an initiative advocating for the inclusion of animal source foods like meat, dairy, and eggs for a more nutritious, sustainable, and equitable worldwide food system. You can check it out and join me at globalfoodjustice.org. Thanks again for listening, and now on to our show. If you're looking for a guide to help you get your diet back on track, to help you feel your very best, and to learn more about meat's role in a healthy and sustainable and ethical food system, then I highly recommend you take my Sustainivore course. I've condensed all of my knowledge in human nutrition and agriculture and have made it accessible to everyone in 8 easy modules. There are quizzes, tips, and motivational emails to keep you on your journey. It also comes with a free cookbook and other great bonuses. So eat for your health, the planet, and your values. Head to sustainivore.com today and check it out. Welcome back to the Sustainable Dish Podcast, and I am so happy to not just have Will Harris, but his 2 beautiful daughters here with us as well to celebrate this amazing day, which is their book launch day. And I want you all to run out and get it. And I want to talk about it here on the podcast. And for those of you who have never published a book before, the very first week that the book comes out is the most important week for kind of like establishing its success rate with not only New York Times bestseller list, but also with Amazon. And so if you're even thinking about getting this book, you need to get it today. Hit order today. Get it now to give these guys a leg up and make sure that their sales are super strong so that everyone hears their story and these guys can succeed from their book as much as they've done such great work on their farm. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us, Diana.
And you don't have to worry about us asking for help on our next book, because we're not going to have a next book.
No.
This is the book.
If you're going to buy a book about White Oak Pastures, you have to do it now. This is the only one there'll be.
Yeah. So why don't you each go introduce yourselves and talk about what your role is here on the farm, or there on the farm.
Will Harris. I'm the 4th generation of my family to operate this farm, White Oak Pastures in Bluffton, Georgia. And I'm ably assisted by my 2 daughters here. You are?
Jodi Harris Benoit, and I'm the Director of Tourism here on the farm.
And I am Jenni Harris, and I am the Director of Marketing for White Oak Pastures.
And I just can't share enough about how much I love you guys. You have hosted me several times for workshops. I trusted you with my son, my firstborn, during COVID. And I am so impressed not only with the work, Will, that you've done on the farm and also regenerating the community there in Bluffton, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but with Jenni and Jodi too. The hospitality is top notch. It is just such a welcoming, warm place to stay, and you feel just so taken care of. And during the workshops, we also would take a group over to visit with Jenni and just see how incredibly sophisticated the work is that goes into all of the marketing and all of the shipping. And I mean, it's not really a piece of the business that you might think, or me as a visitor would think, is fascinating, but it is fascinating only because there's just so many details, and it's so like top notch, state of the art. So let's maybe start with a little bit of the history of the farm that you cover in the book, and then we'll dive into everything else.
Good. So, but I do want to acknowledge that I did return your son unscathed. Possibly he knew a few new words. That could be. But he was, other than that, he was in good shape. He was fine.
And a few admirers, I think, too.
Yeah, the girls loved him. Yeah. So White Oak Pastures is our family farm, founded by my great grandfather in 1866. Then run by my grandfather, then run by my father, then me, and now these two young ladies and their spouses.
All right, that was the short version of a
Oh,
much longer
the
story.
longer version is we're in Southwest Georgia, Bluffton, Georgia, almost Alabama, almost Florida. We pasture raise 5 red meat species: cows, hogs, sheep, goats, rabbits. We also pasture raise 5 poultry species. We hand butcher them. We have two USDA inspected plants, 1 poultry, 1 red meat. We have a store. We have a restaurant. We have an RV park. We love having guests. We have overnight accommodations here, and that's the longer version.
I think
Yes.
one of the things that should be mentioned that you might be getting to is that in Bluffton we've sort of rebuilt a food system, and we can talk more about the decentralization of food and how it manifests itself in Bluffton. But what Dad did, and he's probably won't talk about himself, but he was a very early innovator in the grass-fed beef movement. So he inherited a very nice farm and realized that he wanted to do things differently. He wanted a specific way to raise calves, a specific way to treat the land. But in doing so, he wasn't able to extract that added cost back out of the market. So we had to build a new market, which was the grass-fed beef local food movement. And he was an early innovator. He did that in the mid 90s. And throughout the early 2000s, developed the brand White Oak Pastures, which ultimately was well received by a couple of grocery stores, Whole Foods and Publix, which gave us the ability to build processing on the farm. So, today the thing that makes us, I think, most unique is that we're a vertically integrated food system. We pasture raise, livestock. We process them in our own farm processing plants, and then we distribute them to either grocery stores or end consumers that care about good animal welfare, land regeneration, and the rural revival of towns like Bluffton.
Yeah, the history of the farm is my great grandfather and grandfather would have run the farm in a very traditional for the pre-industrial revolution, agricultural revolution era. A lot of different species, a lot of vertical integration here on the farm. My dad took over the farm post World War II, and it became a monoculture of only cattle, very industrialized. He ran the farm successfully that way all his life. I went to the University of Georgia, graduated in 1976. I came home and ran it very industrially as a cattle operation for 20 years. And then we started moving it in this direction.
Right. And so there was a big push to industrialize and get bigger, get out. I mean, it's not that they were looking to harm land or anything. That was just the way the ag industry was moving. And so, but again, as you mentioned, in the 90s, that was a pretty early time to go regenerative before that was even a buzzword or anything. Can you talk a little bit about, it was not an overnight transition to 100% the way you do things now, but will you talk a little bit about why you shifted and how that happened?
Yeah, so I became just fairly quickly disgusted. After doing it for 20 years, I became fairly quickly disgusted with the excesses of the industrial model and didn't really have a good business plan. I just started moving away from it very quickly and very intentionally. And as you pointed out, grass-fed beef was just something people were starting to talk about in the mid 90s. And we were able to sell Whole Foods Market and Publix the first pound of American grass-fed beef that they marketed as American grass-fed beef in that era. So it was much from the perspective of marketing, it was much easier then than it is today. Today, there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace. It's really tough. The bad news was, though, I had to figure it out. There were no books about grass-fed beef in the mid '90s, how to grow it, how to raise it, and but we did. We figured it out, and we're still figuring it out, and it's been a good move for us. Prior to the mid '90s, I had 3 or 4 minimum wage employees at about $1 million in volume a year. Today, we've got about 170
Yeah.
employees and do 20 something $1 million in volume a year. The business, oddly, the business is not much more profitable today than it was then, but it's a lot more impactful today
Yeah.
than it was then.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the economic impact and then also the ecological impact. The farming industry has seen, loss of human labor and more machine. And human labor for farming is really the backbone of rural America. And you have really revitalized Bluffton, which is, I believe at one point you said it was the poorest county in the United States, or maybe battle, closest to the
A battle
uh,
to the bottom.
Yeah, it's a race
yeah,
to the bottom. So Clay
right,
County, Bluffton is in Clay County, Georgia, and it is or has been the poorest county in the United States based
yeah,
on USD government figures.
right,
Uh, we, when I started moving the operation from what it was to what it is, the focus initially was on the welfare of the animals, but very quickly the impact on the land became obvious and important to me. So that became something we really focused on. The economic benefit to the town was never on my radar. I was born in 1954. The town had been in decline all my life, and I thought that was just the way that was. And then looked up one day and said, "This is kind of getting nice around here. We got a lot of employees, and we pay them. I'm not proud of what we pay our employees, but it's well above the county average. It's not as much as I want it to be. But it's a lot more than the other employers pay." So the town has actually made a very nice little comeback. And I hope that's something that'll be emulated again and again and again across the country.
yeah. And a little bit of your story, we'll make sure to put the link in there from Peter Bick's. It was 10,000 Beating Hearts. Was that the name of it? Yes.
100,000.
100,000 Beating Hearts. I always get those two
Yeah.
reversed. 100,000 Beating Hearts from Peter Bick, which is a great, about 10-minute long or so video, really featuring you and really highlights the economic impact that you've done there. But it's nothing like when you physically go to the farm and actually see, the fact that I know exactly where you guys are sitting right now. Will you kind of just for visually explain to us, like, I mean, you guys are the town pretty much.
Well, there are only 3 employers in town. There's the post office, U.S. Post Office. It's only open a couple of hours a day, 5 days a week. There's a friend of mine owns a peanut buying business that only operates about 6 weeks a year during the harvest season. And there's us. And Bluffton's got less citizens than we have employees. So not just about everybody in Bluffton that works for White Oak Pastures. There's some people that don't work. We started 20 years ago buying houses and lots and storefronts as they came up for sale. We just didn't have a plan initially. They sold so cheap. You could buy. I bought that whole city block right over there for $10,000, and it was a jungle, but it was a city block inside the city of Bluffton. and we've continued to do that. And we certainly don't own all of them. We own a lot of it, and I really am optimistic about doing something with the town. I think we can make it a very pleasant little town. We got plans, and we'll just see how it goes.
So you've taken over the church, and it is now the center for CFAR. Will you talk a little bit about CFAR?
Sure.
Yeah, so in the fall of 2021, Dad really wanted to take our educational arm to another level. And for us, the establishment of our 501c3, the Center for Agricultural Resilience, was to do that. We don't believe that regenerative agriculture is very scalable, but we do believe it's very replicatable. But in order to be replicated, uh, we feel as though sharing what we've done in Bluffton, not as a how-to course, but as a here were the obstacles, here's what we did to get around them type of experience sharing is really important. So Dad founded CFAR in the fall of 2021, and we put on probably 6 or 8 educational workshops a year, and that's something Jodi can talk more about than I can. But it really is an interesting group of workshops because we're kind of all bound with food. Whether you're a farmer or a consumer or a legislator, you participate in the food system, and so we've had a lot of fun trying to structure who the target market is and how to capture those people and how to get them to Bluffton, and the experience that we can share. So, anyways, it's been a great thing for us.
Yeah. Like Jenny said, we have probably 6 to 8 workshops that are hosted by CFAR here at the farm, and those vary from solar grazing to an immersive introduction to regenerative agriculture, and then we do a fundamentals, which is the why we do what we do, and this is all just simply the laboratory for that. And then we also have really enjoyed this past year bringing guest speakers to the farm. Not that we're homesteaders, but I find that the our consumer crowd really enjoys participating in the beekeeping and the butchering, which we all do outside the general store, and just the things that you could do in your backyard. And not that we pride ourselves on being really good at that model, but we really enjoy bringing people who may be experts like Diana Rogers in nutrition, on the here to teach about it and partner with them.
Yeah, and it was so cool. Like when I did my workshop, I thought for sure it was just going to be people interested in just maybe the homesteading or nutrition, but you also had a lot of people that wanted to meet Will and wanted to learn more about farming. So we had a nice mix of young farmers. So I'm glad they have dedicated education programming for them now, to teach more people how to replicate regen ag. And of course, it's going to look a little different depending on where in the country they are, but that's sort of the beauty of using your brain as a farmer. So, and we haven't mentioned the restaurant and the store too, but it's you guys took over. Was it an old mercantile before? Is that correct? What was it?
The store was the general merchandise. It was Mr.
Okay.
Herman Bass's general merchandise, and,
Yeah.
and
Um, and you guys
we
have done such a good job of I mean, you can buy leather products, which, I mean, the leather industry is really not doing well these days. I mean, even electric car companies, in an effort to be more sustainable, are removing the only sustainable organic piece of the car, which is the leather. uh
That
and
makes
and
sense.
so what's that?
I said that makes a lot of sense.
I know it just as much sense as everything else in that world, in that tech world of trying to make everything better, and as you're doing it, destroy things at the same time, right? But you've
We
got
made a
this
whole bunch of good
amazing,
problems.
yeah, you've got this amazing restaurant. You're also doing some really cool stuff, not just with the leather, but you're also taking, I mean, so, and a lot of my listeners know this, but less than half that animal of a beef cow steer is edible, but the rest of that animal, there's other important parts of it. And you guys have really developed ways of utilizing pretty much everything. Will you talk a little bit about what's going on at your processing facility?
So we do endeavor to operate as a zero waste facility. We have a pretty thriving business with organs as well as the meat from the animals we slaughter. Hides we have tanned, or we make rawhide pet shoes. Uh, as just Donna mentioned, there's only about 300 or 400 pounds of edible product in a cow, beef in a cow. So there's a lot of stuff. We market bones, and then we have a composting operation. We generate about 9 tons a day, 5 days a week, of just absolutely inedible product, even as pet food, and that's composted and it's spread back on the land. We have 3,200 acres of land that we raise animals on, and nearly 2,000 acres of solar voltaic land that we also maintain as pasture land with sheep on it. So all that is recycled back in nature. It's all about a full utilization, showing gratitude to the land and the animals for what they provide for us.
We didn't talk about tallow. Jodi, you want to tell them about the soap?
Yeah, so Jenni's wife Amber is our director of specialty products, and obviously fat does not compost very well, and so we take the suet fat, which is a clean fat around the kidneys of the cow, and we'll render that down to make tallow candles, soap, salves, chapsticks, which everyone really enjoys, and we are cooking more with tallow in our own restaurant, which has been exciting.
You've heard about how bad seed oils are for you, haven't you? You've heard about that, right?
Times.
Okay. We're starting to use some animal fat in our restaurant too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I you can get the my favorite thing that you guys make in addition to the candles, which smell amazing, is the lotion, the tallow cream, like it's like a cold cream. What do you call it?
It's a whipped moisturizer.
Whipped moisturizer. So I have it in the lavender scent and the plain, and especially at the end of the day in the winter, or when I'm doing pottery, which really dries out my hands. And I've tried a bunch of other tallow products, and this one doesn't feel greasy. It doesn't smell like I'm covering myself in beef fat, which is a lovely thing. It's really, really great.
Claims, but we're all like over 60. We use it on our skin, so you can't make that claim. We're all very old.
I'm 95.
Yeah, I'm 65.
I'm not.
This podcast is made possible by my favorite electrolyte company, Element. Started by my good friend and co-author, Rob Wolf, it's a delicious blend of sodium, magnesium, and potassium to keep you hydrated better than water alone. It's sugar-free and has no dodgy ingredients. In addition to hydration, electrolytes are important in regulating your immune system, helping to keep you healthy during the colder months in cold and flu season. My kids and I love the citrus and raspberry flavors, but you can get a free sample pack of flavors when you head over to sustainabledish.com/LMNT and place your first order. I wanted to also mention, again, that people can stay there, which is really, really cool. And that now you have an RV park too. Will you talk a little bit about, it's not just for the workshops, but people can just go online and book. Will you talk a little bit about the experience of staying there?
So when I first went into this business, I was unprepared for the number of people that would come to see us. It was pleasant, and I was delighted to have them, but I just didn't expect them and was not set up to deal with them. but we have over the last 20 years taken steps to prepare ourselves. And one of the things is we are literally 15 miles from the nearest place to eat, the nearest restaurant, and it's low end fast food type places. So we built the restaurant, and we later had people that would come to see us, and it's 50 miles literally to a Holiday Inn or a place that most people would want to stay. So we provided lodging, and it's just evolved over a period of time. But it's probably, and every time we went in one of those businesses, I would say, well, this is probably going to lose a little money, but maybe we can afford it, and we need to have it for the greater good of building our brand. And eventually, all these little businesses have risen to the point of break even. So it's good. We think we offer a pretty pleasant experience by having for people that come here.
Lodging for us really kind of took off when COVID hit. Before then, it's very hard to get to Bluffton, and it felt like getting people to Bluffton was very hard. But when COVID hit and people felt sort of like prisoners, they lived very conveniently close to a bunch of places that they could not go inside of. They sort of retreated to rural America. So we saw a real increase in visitors, in 2020 and 2021. And that really jump-started, I think Jodi would agree, jump-started the lodging and tourism business, which was one of the silver linings for the COVID pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We serve 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and did so through the pandemic. We have our red meat slaughter plant and our poultry slaughter plant, and we operated every single day that we were supposed to through the pandemic. So it was kind of a non-event for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're lucky, you may even stay in the cottage on the lake with the alligators in it, where Will used to bathe. And you can go out at night and shine your flashlight out and see eyeballs staring back at you. And there's not many places where you can go and actually pay for that experience. So,
and we've never lost a visitor ever.
And that is the most popular cabin here on the farm, is the one on the 15-acre pond.
Yeah, it's really cool, and it was really fun when I came down with Jules Horn and Sam Garwin, and we all stayed there. It was really, really fun. And as you mentioned, because the area around you is not super wealthy and might not necessarily have the access to afford the meat that you produce, shipping is really the number one way that you are able to stay in business. And so, Jenni, could you talk a little bit? I mean, it is really fascinating. Everything. I forget what you studied in college. I mean, I know that Jodi studied hospitality, but did you study business operations? Because you are like so impressive when you talk about it.
Well, you're very nice. I studied the going to the bar after hours as well. I don't think you can really count what I did in college. I did get a marketing degree, but I was definitely not focused on it. I've always loved e-commerce. It's always been something that I felt was a really relevant thing for us being in the middle of nowhere. Without question, we have to get what we do to metropolitan places. Consumers don't consume where farmers farm. And so, for us, the challenge is, how do you get it there? And so we started shipping meat pretty quick when I returned home to work full time on the farm in 2010. And it was a pretty humble effort. We were doing, 30 to 60 orders a week. And we were proud of every single one of them, but there was really no marketing component, no acquisition component. It was just, we had a website, we served whoever stumbled onto it. But In 2014, we decided that we wanted e-commerce to be a meaningful part of the business. So we invested in a responsive website. So I don't know if you remember what that means, but like if you look at it on an iPad versus a big computer versus a phone, it's dynamic and it moves with it. And that was our first okay, we're going to spend several $1,000s to make this happen. So we're going to have to set some KPIs and some goals. And so we did that, and we had some early, key points that we wanted to maintain, and we were able to do it. And it was spending that money and setting those KPIs that gave us sort of the trajectory to smash future goals. And so in 2020, I guess 2020 or 2021, we launched our Shopify site, which really was perfect timing, because I think we wound up doing about $2 million in revenue in 2019. And in 2020, as things just kind of went crazy. And we did over 6 just in 2020. So from 2019 closing at 2 million to 2020 closing at 6 million. It was not a very graceful thing for us. We made a lot of mistakes, but we learned a lot of lessons, and we got good at what we did. And we've continued to grow since then, but we've got a real strong marketing component to it now. We couldn't really say anything through the pandemic because we were struggling to keep up. There was really no need to market because we couldn't possibly touch the demand, but we're now having to work for it, and that's fun too. So we've got a very active email subscriber list that we segment into different areas based on your location and where you live and where we'd send your order. We've got a very active text messaging marketing strategy. We launched our own app this year, which has been a lot of fun for us to be able to send push notifications. And we're also very active with regard to podcast and interviews and and sharing our stories. So we've really tried to tackle a lot more channels this year, and we're hopeful that our customer acquisition will show it.
And are you currently shipping across the entire United States right now, or?
We can. So the way we have to do it, because we're shipping from Southwest Georgia, which is a very extreme corner, that more than half of the United States for us is express, and express is really expensive. So for us, we really focus in on that ground network. If you live in the express network, we still will happily take your order and be grateful for it, but it's hard for us to make that cost effective for us or them. So we've really focused on the East Coast and our ground network, and so it's pretty much New York to Miami to Ohio, Texas. That's sort of our bubble.
And it's never been our goal to make White Oak Pastures a national company.
Right.
We need a certain amount of volume to make our business work. But seeing how big we can blow it up is not on the agenda. We really promote other farms doing what we've done in their own geographies. And we've got farms that we support. Some of them.
Right.
We have to sell a certain amount of stuff to cover our costs, but just to see how big we can make it is not. That's not
right.
That's not on the agenda.
Yeah, which is not something most people would admit to, or I guess not admit, but
it's an odd business strategy.
Yeah, but it just seems like everyone else is just as big as possible, growth, and you guys have really kind of honed in on what's a sweet spot for having a sustainable business, not only ecologically but also probably for your sanity too.
We think in terms of resilience. What happens if and so resilience is expensive, but when we can afford it, we want to. And so we're working now from a capacity perspective to safen certain parts of the business so that if UPS does strike, we have an option. We're not left with more than half of our revenue not able to be had because UPS is on strike. So I think one of the strategies for us, it's never been about growth. Well, I say it's not. It's not about growth. It has been about growth. When we were
It's
trying
not
to
about
reach,
unlimited growth.
that's right. When we were trying to reach capacity, our processing plant, you better believe growth was, front and center. But for
Right.
us, it's all about what is the safest business for us? How can we, continue to operate and know that we'll be able to continue to operate if the worst thing happens?
And we are farmers. That's our skill set. We're not executive officers. We don't want to have a business so big that we got to hire a CEO to run it for us.
That's right.
That's just not part of the plan. And you and I have talked a lot about scalable versus replicatable. This business is not highly scalable. It's not meant to be. It's highly replicatable. Let somebody else do it somewhere else.
Right. And again, these farms can look very different. I mean, where I was farming, we had local people. We didn't need to do shipping. So it really just depends on where you are, what the land can handle. And before we go and really push the book on people hardcore, I just want to I'm just remembering this one really interesting point when I was doing one of my workshops at your farm. We were learning the EOV process out in the field. And I'm not sure if you'll remember this, Will, but we were talking about how the field might look like a field of weeds to a typical farmer. And even, one of your neighbors might have looked out on one of your pastures thinking it's just completely full of weeds and other unwanted things. But you were talking about this is part of the diversity of what you're actually encouraging. There was a young woman who came forward and raised her hand, and she said she was from Georgia Extension, and she was sent to the workshop to check it out to see what was going on. And she said, I 100% admit that when I first saw this pasture, I thought it was weeds, and now I get it. And I
And
thought that that was really, really cool.
Well,
So the ecological impact is real, it's big, and you are influencing a lot of people. I don't know if you want to add to that at all.
well, if you come from industrial agriculture, as I did, and as that young lady had, that the beauty of that monoculture is what you're looking for. I mean, it's really pretty to see row after row after row of identical plants growing. It's mesmerizing. There's something beautiful about it. But it is as unnatural as an ice cube on a fire. And it's not supposed to be that way. And once you change your perspective, your vision changes, and you see beauty in all that diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just goes back to the resilience piece. So the more complex and resilient the pasture or the business, the healthier it is, right? So it goes to the pasture, it goes to the business, and you guys just complement each other so well, with all your different skill sets. And again, I'm so happy to be affiliated with you guys, to be endorsing you. I don't know if you want to add anything else before we, drop the book and basically force everyone who's listening to this podcast to go out and order it.
I do want to say one thing. We're farmers, and we feel like we're experts at that. But we can't just be farmers. We can't just say, here's what we do, and this is why you should support it. We need people like you and consumers like the ones listening to this podcast to embrace it. A food system is a collaboration between those who produce and those who consume and everybody in between. And so, for us, we are farmers, but it's just half the battle. It's just part of the food system. It takes passionate consumers that demand it done this way so that we can continue to do it. And it takes really smart, influential people like you to help educate people on what we're doing. So, it goes without saying that we can only do what we do if you continue to do what you do and your listeners continue to do what they do. And if your listeners want to see more of what we do, then they need to buy more of these types of products, not just from us, but from their local farmers, so that they have the confidence to make investments into diversify and add resilience into their models. So I don't want to close a single opportunity like this without saying that.
Thank you. Yeah. Anything else? Guys are
Come here.
yeah.
I'm
All right. So the book is A Bold Return to Giving a Damn: One Farm, Six Generations, and the Future of Food. Will Harris, owner of White Oak Pastures. It is available wherever books are sold. If you can find this in your local bookstore, those sales count even more than Amazon sales to a New York Times list, because I want to try to help you guys get on it. So if Amazon is your go-to place, certainly order it there. But bookshop.org, Powell's, your local bookstore, diversify your purchases, people, because in brick and mortar sales are really important also to these books counting towards making sure, and it's not just the accolades of New York Times, but if this book makes it, then the press that will come from all of this will just help the overall movement of regen ag get closer to more mainstream. So you're really, by buying this book, you're helping the whole entire cause of regen ag make a giant leap forward. So.
And in fact, we mentioned other farms in the book in other sections of the United States that we feel like are part of the leadership of changing things.
Yeah, and we, by the time this goes live, Diana, there will be a landing page set up specific to the book so that people will know exactly where they can buy it. The URL will be whiteoakpastures.com /book. And that will that'll lead to a page that tells a little bit about why Dad chose to write it and what he hopes that it does, where people can buy the book, and the other farms that he mentioned that that we believe are part of the leadership.
Wonderful. Yeah, you guys are part of the Savory Network. You're actually a Savory hub there at White Oak Pastures. And I know you have some really strong friends out in the world of regen ag, and you've just done so much to I don't know, I'm gushing so much, but I just you've done so much to help spread the word about making sure that people return to more natural ways of farming. So thank you for all the work that you've done.
Along those lines, 25 years ago when I started moving in this direction, I thought that I was an early innovator in changing the direction of food production. And I operated like that for a long time. And I don't, in recent years, I've come to question whether it's going to work out that way or not. It really hadn't taken off the way I believe that it would, should, could. And I just don't know. If the consumer gets to decide, the government really doesn't decide, USDA doesn't decide, consumers are going to make that determination.
That's it, everyone. So everyone who's listening, this is up to you. I want you to go order the book. And while you're at it, pick up some meat and book a stay. You could try out their food. You could meet Will if you're lucky, and Jenni and Jodi. And I hope to get back there real soon. So thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you so much, Diana.
Thank you, Diana.
Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, Diana here. I wanted to let you know that after many years and over 1 million downloads of the Sustainable Dish podcast, I've decided it's time to direct my attention to other projects, including the Global Food Justice Alliance. It's been a true honor to interview so many important leaders in the health and agricultural fields. and I've loved every minute of it. So October 31st, 2023 will be the last episode. Thank you so much for all of my dedicated listeners out there, for your attention, your time. Thank you to Emily, my podcast editor, and to James Connolly, my co-host. Be sure to follow me at Global Food Justice and also at Sustainable Dish. You can get my newsletters, help contribute to the mission that I'm working on to make sure that all people have access to nutrient-dense animal source foods. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening today and for following my work. If you believe in making sure people all over the world should have access to nutritious food, please join my mission through my nonprofit, the Global Food Justice Alliance. Visit sustainabledish.com/join and become a sustaining member today. All sustaining members get free downloads, and you'll be helping get healthy protein like meat, fish, and eggs to food insecure kids. That's sustainabledish.com/join.